You who are less familiar with who we are and what we do, this is just a single fast fact sheet that tells you a little more about where we come from. We're now a little more than 10 years in existence here in Israel. That gives us a little maturity in the world of nonprofits. Most nonprofits don't last more than 2 years. For 10 years we've had trials and tribulations, we've had successes and failures, and we've learned from the failures. And along the way, we've had good continuity of leadership, and we have been able to build from one phase to the next. In the course of these 11 years or so, we've deployed about $20 million of financial capital in Israel only, and a lot more intellectual and social capital measured in the hours and labor of our mentors and our friends and our social leaders. We're a network of people. In other words, we learn from each other, we communicate amongst each other, we're not a pyramid, and ideas can come from anybody in the network. And the key people inside this network are the mentors, the people who are donating their time, several days a month in most cases, helping the social leaders in the field be more successful and learn from the wisdom and sometimes the mistakes that were made in the world of business that we can learn from and apply in the social world. So that's basically who we are and what we do. And a brief view of our history will tell you that we've had maybe 4 phases in our existence, and we're about to move into the next one, beginning now and in future years. We really cut our teeth trying to help improve the educational system inside this country at a time when it was falling down, and we focused our work in municipal interventions in various cities throughout Israel. From there, we learned a great deal about how to work, how to engage with municipalities, how to work with social partners. And the best legacy of this entire phase was the creation of Avnei Rosha, an initiative that helped create a permanent institution to train principals, to make them better managers, better principals, and improve and uplift the entire schools. This is now an institution that works, that is completely legitimate, funded by the government in partnership with Yad Nadiv. And this is a legacy that we're very proud of, that took us several years of field work to get to, and is now functioning and training principals, both new principals and in service. We're very proud of that. Along the way, we identified the power of social entrepreneurs. Most of us are entrepreneurs at heart. We did this in the world of business, many of us in the world of high tech, but we recognize that this mindset, this desire to change the world, make a dent on the world, as Steve Jobs likes to say, is something that exists amongst many people, and sometimes it is directed at social goals, social objectives. And these people deserve access to capital just like the business entrepreneurs. We created a first social entrepreneurship program back in the 2002-2003 timeframe, and now, 8-9 years later, these enterprises have actually produced results. They're successful, and these leaders have become our heroes. In 2006, remember the Second Lebanon War? It was a different origin from the missiles. They attacked the north. They devastated the fabric of small businesses in the north. We decided to address this through our economic initiative. We worked with small businesses in the north, and we discovered the power of mentorship. We realized that it was not enough to invest in financial capital. We had to couple this with mentors, and this is what helped us recover the health of several hundred small businesses in the north. This initiative, called YERI, is really what helped us understand that we had to create sustainable performance in order to continue our efforts. And then we created a social venture program. A social venture program really was born in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. when we discovered that in order to sustain an effort, we cannot depend on charity alone. Charity fades. The Madoff crisis happens. Funding gets terraced. And in essence, we have to be able to build an activity that generates funds, that creates sustainability in order to continue to survive. The business core of the organization helps identify products and services which are tested by the markets, can be sold, can command a price, and can generate revenue. The social innovation is basically what enables us to create this inside of a non-profit structure. And the capital is what we invest in these social ventures in order to help them create the products and services, but with the benefit of the wisdom and experience that business people can bring to the picture.
Excuse me, Eric, can you please change the mic? It's really hard to listen because it's too loud.
Is this one better? Okay. I apologize for the sound problems. I realize the audience must be hard. Okay. So these are the three elements that we brought to bear in our social venture program. Now, when we started, admittedly, it was an experiment. But today it's no longer an experiment, it's a success. We have a portfolio of over 24 such social ventures. These are non-profit organizations that pursue social missions, but along the way have enhanced their sustainability by creating a product or a service which the market accepts and rewards with revenues. This enhances their ability to survive, to grow, and to thrive. You recognize many names. I'm not going to mention them one by one, but you see a smattering of organizations that are part of the civil society landscape of today. I have to say that oftentimes opportunity comes from major crises. The 2008 financial crisis affected the entire world. It affected Israel in particular. It affects the world of nonprofits even more so because so many of our foundations had major investments in the Madoff Fund and they were decimated. So this is in fact why we had to become even more creative than before and figure out ways to reduce our dependency on the stream of nonprofit contributions, oftentimes that came from US foundations directed in Israel. So from this crisis came the creative thinking and the opportunity of creating basically, of teaching social entrepreneurs to build social ventures which are bigger, have more impact, more sustainability. This was at first a tentative effort, but we realized that it's not enough to just have a modest contribution from products and services. You have to really make this, it reduces your dependency on financial contributions, but if you really want to make the enterprise sustainable, it has to be a central effort of the enterprise. It cannot be just an afterthought. So the next phase, natural evolution in this 11-year history, is to in fact create a full fund. Not just a one-off series of investments, but a fund which will have the discipline, structure, expertise, and know-how to build these social enterprises to scale, such that they're sustainable and they have an impact not just in a small community, but they have an impact nationally. So if we really want to get to the next level, we have to move from a modest social venture that has a product, a single product, to a full-fledged enterprise which has critical mass, which has sustainability, which has enough revenues to be able to continue to expand and pursue the social mission it has chosen. So the Tandem Fund in many ways builds upon all the phases that IVN has been through. It builds upon the importance of interacting with the governments that we discovered throughout our work in education. It builds upon the mentorship and the social entrepreneurs that we use in our social entrepreneurship program, as well as social venture program and our economic reconstruction program. It basically brings all of these lessons together. Now that we have all of these pieces in place, we're finally prepared to make this into a full fund, very similar in professionalism, structure, ways of operation to some of the venture funds that you all know about. Ronald was the head of one of the most significant ones globally. There are many people from the venture community here. So you understand the terms that I'm using, you understand the methodology, except that today we're going to apply them to social enterprises. So the IVN Tandem Fund will be the focus of the next several slides, and hopefully you have a good sense of how it works and what it intends to accomplish. Along the way, you'll notice that there's a slightly different look and feel for our logo. We felt it was important to refresh our look, since at the same time as we're transitioning phase, we're transitioning how we come across to the outside world. This chart captures some of the points which Ronald was making in his remarks, including the fact that you have a broad spectrum of enterprises ranging from the traditional nonprofits to the traditional for-profits, and many flavors and nuances in between. And this is not to say that one is better than the other. You need the entire spectrum. But this is simply to tell you, where does IVN focus? IVN focuses traditionally on nonprofits who have figured out a way to create an income generation stream. And now increasingly, it will focus on the ones who are full-fledged social enterprises who are able to sustain themselves from this income generation activity while making their social mission still the central focus of their work. This is where IVN plays. These are still non-for-profits. On this side, they're for-profit enterprises. Those ones have, I would say, a social motive. They'll make a profit. And those ones are the traditional for-profit commercial enterprises. So I'm sure that you can find many other finer slices in this spectrum, but I thought this was good enough for a discussion today. So this is where IVN plays. You will see these phrases oftentimes mentioned to define a social enterprise. In all cases, the enterprise is socially driven. This is what it would not come into existence just to make money. It comes into existence because it has a social goal, it has a social mission. Making a profit is a strategy to be able to enable it to sustain itself towards a social mission. Enterprise that relies on creative, market-oriented solutions designed to solve social issues. Again, the end goal is a social mission. Enterprise designed to generate financial and social bottom lines. This is this notion of a dual bottom line entities that are accountable in two dimensions. Financial return, but at least as importantly, if not more, the social return in as quantified a manner as possible. Nothing like an example to bring this home. Ron will give you several examples of success stories in his various social innovation efforts over the last decades, really. This is one which is scaled to the Israeli landscape. One of the very first social entrepreneurs, Amiad Lapidot, who approached us back in the 2002 timeframe with this idea of creating compost in his moshav. And he really had a few slides, some ideas, but mostly passion and drive. We helped fund him. We helped mentor him. We injected some modest amount of financial capital. And this is basically his trajectory over the last decade. This is the amount of investments that was made into his social enterprise. And realize these are modest levels. And what's increasingly what's mostly satisfying today is that it's peaked and then declined. And as of last year, It does not, yes.
Shekel or dollar?
No, actually, no, these are dollars. These are dollars. It no longer needs any more financial investments today. It is self-sufficient. It has achieved sustainability. This is the end goal. But along the way, notice that it increased revenues. You would expect that. It increased employment. It increased the number of households that it touches, that it brought into its recycling programs. And if you measure the sort of ecological return, this is the amount of waste, organic waste that is recycled to create compost. And this is the total amount of compost reduction over the years. This is frankly a complete success story, a stellar trajectory up and to the right. This is not to say that there were not crises along the way, but clearly it met and exceeded objectives. We didn't expect that all social entrepreneurs that we backed would have this kind of success. Just like as a venture capitalist, when I invest in 10 companies, I really don't expect more than a couple to be really successful. This one was a success that basically opened our eyes to the fact that you can get to sustainability in the world of social enterprises. This chart tells you a little more about what all of these similar mindsets organizations do along the various dimensions, going from grant-funded charities all the way to for-profit businesses. These are the vehicles that they use to deploy the financial capital. And it ranges from outright grants all the way to equity positions with various flavors in between. The Bridges organization that Ronald talked about is on this chart in several places. The Acumen Fund, which is headquartered in Silicon Valley but with a worldwide focus, is right in the middle. And we're going to be, with Tandem, we're going to be right here as well. You're going to see us talk about deploying capital in the form of loans, and you're going to see us focus on social enterprises as primary targets. This puts us almost dead center on this chart. Oftentimes, it requires a reminder to people that running the fund is not the same thing as placing bets on Wall Street. This is not just rearranging capital and then hoping that good things happen. It's an entire process that has to be put in place and refined. It's a very structured, measured process. And it starts by identifying the best sources of investment possible and casting a wide net, followed by a very rigorous process of selection, triaging the more promising ones from the less promising ones. Eventually selecting who you will back and who you will not back. And once you've made a selection and got to an agreement based on a plan, not just a one-year plan, but a multi-year plan to sustainability, then the hard work begins. The hard work begins of creating value, deploying the capital, holding everybody accountable, complying with milestones, both on the social dimension and the financial dimension. This is what we call the incubation phase. The mentors have an essential role to play there. They can make a difference between a flat trajectory and trajectory up into the right, like Amir Lapidot, Compost like Karen did. And finally, you get to the goalpost. The goalpost is when the company, enterprise, reaches sustainability. It meets objectives and no longer needs the support of the fund to be able to continue to operate on its own two feet. So this is an entire process. It's never finished. When you're done with one, you have to regroup, take all your resources back, plow them back into the next enterprise. So the Tandem Fund, of course, has a very uplifting vision of completely transforming the way we tackle the most challenging social problems by making these entities financially sustainable, but injecting know-how and mentorship capital combined with financial capital, combined with best business practices. But frankly, our vision goes beyond improving the social landscape in Israel. Our vision very consistent with Ronald Cohen's vision, is to help identify new pools of capital to be put to work towards social innovation. We don't want to be the only ones doing this. A few years from now, we hope that we'll have many other partners who do similar things to us. We'd like to be able to, within 5 years, have 5, perhaps 10 Tandem-like funds who each address different parts of the social landscape with perhaps slightly different methods, slightly different approaches in a complementary fashion. So we really want to create a new way of thinking about tackling social problems in Israel. This is not something we can do alone. As Ronald said, we have to engage continually our partners in the governments such that they understand the role they can play. They're encouraged to take more risks than they normally would feel comfortable doing, and to see the results and be encouraged by the results and do more. We know that this is not something that is done in one year or 2 years. It is done through perhaps a decade, but in the course of a decade you can see completely different mindsets being applied to the social problems that we have to tackle. Down to the specifics now. The Tandem Fund funds social enterprises. These are enterprises who are already in existence. We're not going to start them from scratch. You can think of us as a growth equity fund in commercial terms. We're taking promising social enterprises who've already proven they had a good team, that they had a product, they had some income, and had a viable social mission. But they do need an injection of capital, both intellectual and financial, to get to critical mass, to get to sustainability. That's what we do. The fund may appear modest, it's only $5 million, but it is challenging to deploy $5 million with such high bar to social enterprises in this country. We want to do this approximately in 100K to 150K increments, resulting in a portfolio of approximately 15 to 30 enterprises. We may start small and it will increase as our bets become more and more solidified. We expect to start operating the fund as soon as we get to the $1.5 million mark. We're 2/3 of the way there. We expect the fund will start operating and issuing loans sometime before the second half of 2013, so we're just a few months away. We're building a pipeline of social enterprises already. A social venture program is a great feeder into the social enterprise fund here. We expect that the fund will have a typical life of 10 years, very similar to the commercial fund. So this is basically a way to segment time and measure progress. Important to emphasize, the investors in this fund are investing really in a non-profit structure. They will not see the capital return. What they will see is they will see their capital deployed across companies who meet social objectives, and they'll see the capital recycled, perhaps more than twice in the life of the fund. They'll get the benefits of a tax deduction because they're basically contributing to an amuta, they're contributing to 501c3 in the US. They'll get the same transparency of information as they would get from any private equity or venture fund. They'll understand how the money is deployed by a company. They'll see the progress made by every company. They'll get audited financial reports. And they'll see results in 2 dimensions, social and financial. In the world of social return, SROI is still a nascent, I would say, technique. But there are standards emerging, and we'll be in compliance with these standards. We'll be reporting for every one of our portfolio companies progress according to the DEAR standard. We'll complement this with enterprise-specific metrics, such that you as an investor understand how your capital is deployed and how the social enterprises meet their goals. So this is the high level, actually not just high level, it's a little more detail about what Tandem will be. We cannot deploy this capital in all kinds of different industries. We have to be focused based on the sectors where we have experience, expertise, and mentors who have the relevant desires and readiness to serve. Basically, we intend to focus on all of these marginalized populations in the country, and in these three sectors where we believe we can make the biggest difference: economic opportunity, education, in the case of compostacarium environment. There are many other sectors which require help. I could imagine half a dozen other funds that cover different economic sectors or social sectors in the country. This is our share. This is where we focus. This is where we think we can make a difference. All funds require a transparent governance structure. Ours is very similar to what you would expect in a major private equity or venture fund. Our fund exists basically as an initiative of IVN, and it uses its non-profit entity and structure and tax status. Therefore, it benefits from the management team of IVN that has been built and expanded over the last decade. It has two oversight structures which you would find in most funds. It has an advisory board, people who have domain expertise and who also contribute to the fund, and who can help us select the best ventures to back, can help us conduct due diligence, to give us strategic advice. But then it has an investment committee, which functions like any investment committee in a fund. It makes all the key investment decisions and policy decisions of the fund. And the investment committee has to have the discipline of not backing enterprises which are doomed to fail. It has to back enterprises that have serious potential to win and make an impact. There are meager resources available to deploy. We have to deploy them on the ones that can have the biggest impact possible. The IVN board has an oversight of the entire structure, the IVN resources themselves as well as the fund. Several members of the IVN board will serve on the investment committee, but there'll be other people as well who have investment committee expertise and discipline. So that's basically the multi-layer structure that provides governance. Because you are tapping from experience from all these different fronts, we know that we can provide transparency to our investors. All of these people will have a lot at stake in making the fund successful. Where the rubber meets the road is in the world of the social enterprise. The social enterprise benefits from the collaboration between these three groups of people. The people who run the fund basically deploy the capital, manage it. The members and the mentors who work in very close day-to-day partnership with the social enterprise leaders. Think of them as board members of these enterprises. And the management team of IVN that provides the day-to-day support and know-how, that runs the process, that helps provide the selection infrastructure, that helps doing the triage, that helps do the due diligence, and provides the resources that the social enterprise need on a day-to-day to meet their operating plans. So these are the players, and they all work together to make the social enterprise successful. And if enough of the social enterprises are successful, then Tandem will be successful. I'm going to close and wrap this up by giving you some concrete examples. Again, nothing like examples to bring this home. I have three. This one is Tandem Café, which is a coffee shop, and also an event center in Ashkelon. What's remarkable about this is that it provides employment for the mentally challenged population. Very clear what the product and service is. You're providing food, you're providing basically catering services, and provide event support. And what's remarkable about this is that the people they employ would have very, very great difficulties finding any other kind of employment. About 3% of the population in Israel, not just in Israel, but probably in most countries, suffers from some kind of mental illness, mental challenges. Only a small percentage of this population is able to receive help. In most cases, the kind of jobs that they have access to are boring, repetitive jobs. These jobs are much higher quality jobs. It provides a much better level of integration of this mentally challenged population into mainstream society. So this is what Bunny and Bickerfit is about. And like for every one of our social enterprises, we have kind of a one-page summary of what they do, the progress achieved, and the impacts that they have. So this is a relatively new arrival into the portfolio, 2010. We don't have many years of experience, but already it is trending into the right direction. We're measuring the number of employees, that is Bunny and Bickerfit employees. We're measuring the salary per hour. We're measuring how much revenue you get on a monthly basis. And you can see that there is about a 20% uplift year on year, which is, I would say, better than the metrics of 90% of the businesses in this country. Here's another case study in a different sphere of influence for us. The social enterprise is called Cinderella, and what it provides is basically domestic help service, housekeeping service to households, employing women who normally would be exploited, deriving much below minimum wage salaries, running the risk of being completely exploited, and operating in a completely unsafe environment. So Cinderella provides a structure that gives them decent wages and safe transportation and a basic amount of social benefits such that we can really function as legitimate household help. I'm not going to take you through all the details, but what you see is consistent with the previous examples. We have the help of very, very talented mentors. We have visibility into how the investment is deployed, and we have key metrics. In this case, there is very significant progress year on year, a 50% uplift on the number of branches where Cinderella operates in the country. Started off in the south in the Negev. Number of families which are using Cinderella services, going from 400 to 600. Number of employees that Cinderella employs, from 80 to 120. So this is another very encouraging portfolio company within the fund. And the last one may look familiar to the world, to those of you who operate in the world of high tech. It is a high tech firm. It provides IT solutions. But what's special about this is that NP Tech does this for nonprofits exclusively. So they have a variety of services which are priced particularly attractively to the NGOs who can't afford necessarily the expensive IT consulting help that commercial enterprises can. They benefit, again, from mentors. They provide not just services, but also equipment. Most of this equipment is recycled or used, and therefore much more affordable. And like the other two, they're also trending in the right direction. Their income is trending up, both the income from consulting as well as the income from product and service sales here. Most nonprofits are held back because they have a non-competitive IT infrastructure, and they can't afford to have an IT manager. They can't afford to buy the services of a traditional IT consulting firm. So this is a hole that the market offer and demand typically does not address because it's too small. Markets work very efficiently in most zones. There are some pockets of glaring inefficiencies. This is such a pocket, and it has to be filled by an organization like NP Tech, and with the help of a fund like Tandem, who is able to provide both the financial capital and the mentorship to fill that niche at very, very different price points than normal consulting firms. Those three very different examples that give you a sense of how we operate, the kind of people we touch, and while the numbers are modest, they're all trending in the right direction, And they can be scaled up dramatically if we're able to take all of these examples and do them as part of a fund, which provides repeatable experiences, that builds up know-how, and basically in the life of a fund, we're going to have winners and losers. But if we have expertise, we'll have many more winners and losers. So this gives you a sense of what Tandem will be, what Tandem is starting to be. We're declaring it launch today. We're going to start the fundraising process in earnest beginning tomorrow, really. But we've already had several major anchor commitments. So we're basically 2/3 of the way towards our first close. And you can expect that we'll deploy our first Tandem loans, again, around the middle of next year. And if things go well, we'll try to move this up. We expect to find investors not just in Israel, but of course in the US. We expect these investors to be both individuals and foundations and institutions. One of the very first institutions that we've worked with over the last decade is the San Francisco Jewish Federation. And they were the first one to really get exposed to this and to give us significant commitments. We have a few other similar commitments already that give us great encouragement of success. And you're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming weeks and months. So, in closing, I hope that you understand why Tandem has come to exist today. Tandem would not have been possible 10 years ago, but now that we have all this experience under our belts, this is the right next step for us to take. I hope that you'll join us, that you'll consider serving as a mentor, putting someone into work inside the fund, and helping us in any capacity that you choose. This is the work of volunteers. This is the work of all of you combined, and many more who can make it today. But in general, we're very, very encouraged that we are in tune with the times, with the social trends that Ronnie talked about. I'm going to wrap this up now, and I call for a break shortly after any question that you may have, and then we'll resume with a panel discussion. Thank you very much. Hoping that the microphones don't fail upon us. Any questions? In that case, the Tandem perspective is just out the door, ready for you to pick. Sounds like you're all ready for a break. So let's go on break. Thank you very much.